Well, we are in a studio today, but you may not know this, but this is not a WFAA studio. This is a studio that's run by Dallas ISD. By the way, the district has what I think is probably the best program that's run by young people in the country, School Zone Dallas. I don't know if you had a chance to see it yet, but it does come on after the newscast from time to time, and really is something special. And speaking of someone special, we have with us today the superintendent of Dallas Schools, Dr. Hinojosa. How are you doing?
Doing great, thanks, Dan.
Well, first of all, you're a native. I mean, you're from this area, raised, and so this is like old home week for you coming back.
Absolutely. Yeah, I grew up in this community. We moved to Dallas. I was born in Mexico, actually, but we moved to Dallas when I was very young. I was in second grade, and we lived in the West Dallas housing projects, right across from Pinkston when I first moved here. And then grew up in Oak Cliff and went off and got my degree, but came right back to Oak Cliff as a teacher. And so then I went off all over the state to learn how to be a superintendent and got a chance to come back home. So is this special for me? It's more than just a job. It's really important that we get this right for our young people.
Dr. Hinojosa, we want to talk to you because everybody seems to think that they know how to be an educator. People seem to think they know how to be a teacher, to be a principal, to be a superintendent. And the fact of the matter is, nowadays, very few people know some of the things that you're having to deal with. I know that the Morning News has worked on a series talking about immigrants and the difficulties that young people have in getting into society through school. And that's been something that you've been trying to particularly concentrate on with Dallas.
Well, actually, you know, your point is well taken, though, because everybody went to school, so everybody knows something about school. And so a lot of people have the perspective that they know all the parameters that are involved in running a school system. But it is complex because we deal with the lives of young people and they're formative. And we have a lot of challenges, but we have a lot of opportunities too. We have a lot of young people that are very smart, and these young people sometimes have challenges to overcome, whether it's a language or whether it's economic issues where they don't have the resources at home that other families have. But therein lies the whole promise and premise of Dallas Achieves, is that we have great expectations for our young people no matter where they come from, and that we expect them to be successful. And we know that we have challenges, but we don't apologize for the demographics of our kids. We just know we have to do things differently to make them successful.
Yeah, the mistake that a lot of people make, I think, is that they compare Dallas ISD to Plano ISD, but the dynamics of a large urban district, you got 160,000 students, to any suburban district, very different, I'd imagine.
Absolutely, and 85% of our students are economically disadvantaged, and that is a significant number of our students. And then there's a difference between census data about poverty and also just do you qualify for free and reduced lunch. And so when students don't have those resources at home, they start a little further behind. But and the comparisons are different. In fact, people don't realize when you break down the numbers that we have 45,000 African American students, that we have 50,000 limited English proficient students. People don't realize that there are only 13 districts in the state that have 50,000 students, period. We have 50,000 students that are limited English proficient. And then, so that's a language barrier that they have to overcome. So we have a lot more diversity. We have students, we have 3,000 homeless students that people don't realize. So drawing one-to-one comparisons, it may or may not be appropriate, but like I've said before, we don't apologize for the demographics of our kids. We just have to find ways to make them successful academically.
Well, clearly, with the magnet schools in particular, you're unbelievably successful. The talented and gifted doing quite well. Even though they did a TV show about the school that involved with fame, I like to tell all my music friends that school has nothing on Booker T. All of your magnet schools doing quite well.
Absolutely, and one of the reasons that the magnet schools are doing well is because they're schools of choice. Young people choose to go there because there's something that attracts them there. That's precisely what we're going to do with high school redesign over the next 4 or 5 years. We're going to make all of our high schools redesign themselves, reinvent themselves to attract students to them. And the thing about the magnet schools, they have entrance requirements. And in some schools, you have to be at the 80th percentile to get in. Well, there's a lot more kids that can be successful that don't fall into that category. So We want all of our students to get the good stuff that they get at the magnet schools, and thus the transformation activities that we're involved in right now for our community and for our schools. Just having the magnet schools being great is not good enough for us. We need to spread that wealth throughout the community.
I'm curious about the high school redesign that you were talking about. Could you tell me a little more about how that's going to work?
Well, what we're asking all of our high school principals, and 6 of them are doing it this year, have to submit an RFP, a request for proposal, as to how they're going to redesign their high school to make it attractive to young people. And they can develop career pathways which are rigorous. These are still college preparatory, but they also have a career interest involved in them. For example, one of our schools is going to have technology, but it's going to be the gaming technology. And we're working with community college because that's a whole big industry right now that there's a market for, that our young people, which are digital natives, enjoy. And us older people that are digital immigrants, we don't understand that, but the kids do. And that'll hook the kids going into that school. And once we get them there, just like we discussed about music or athletics, something has to be the hook to get them there. And then once we capture them, their hearts and minds, then we can educate them. And so that's what's going to happen. And we have a number of schools with different offerings. Some of them have partnerships with Baylor Hospital. Some of them have a community college. But that's part of what we're trying to do, is transform the way high schools work so that our students can be successful, make it through that path.
You got, in a district this size, you've got no shortage of critics. You've got, and a lot of the debate, a lot of the discussion, the argument, really doesn't have a whole lot to do sometime, I guess, with education of the kids, but with how people relate to each other as adults and that sort of thing. Is that tough for you?
It becomes a challenge at times because people lose focus. Sometimes we think about adult wants instead of student needs, and that becomes difficult when that's the prevalent conversation instead of the conversation of why we even exist, of being here for the students. But you know, one thing people didn't realize, that I taught government for 7 years, so I understand the political nature of things, and I understand that's a necessary part of democracy. I'm not necessarily happy about it when we have those conversations, but I know that has to exist. But we cannot lose focus that we're here for the young people, and we need to make this place better for them, despite some of those other challenges that do appear, occasionally in our discussions.
5-10 years from now, how do you see this district evolving?
I believe that we have a unique opportunity to be a great urban school system. The reason that I believe so, and part of it is we have a plan, and we have to execute the plan, and we have to have constancy of purpose and constancy of leadership, whether it's the school board, whether it's the superintendent, whether it's the principals. If you keep changing and don't have a plan and you start over all the time, it's hard to implement anything. So our biggest challenge is to making sure that we take Dallas Achieves and we implement it and we're consistent. The best urban districts in the country have been identified by the Broad Foundation. There have been 7 award winners. Here's the common denominator, and it's not about me. It's about having stability in leadership. None of them did it without their superintendent being there for 5 years, a minimum of 5 years. Boston, their superintendent was there for 11 years. Long Beach, California, their superintendent was there for 12 years. So it takes a long time to implement a transformation plan in a district of this size. And prior to my arrival, there had been 7 superintendents sat in that chair over a 10-year period. So it's very difficult to get traction when you have a new plan and new leaders all the time. So part of this is having the wherewithal to implement the plan that we have, and we've already started to see some of the payoffs, some of the results. But I do believe we have a competitive advantage. We don't have the significantly declining enrollment that happened in Detroit or Oakland or St. Louis or Buffalo or places like that. And we have a stability. We have a slightly declining enrollment, but it's slight. It's not significant. And so we have an opportunity. We have an opportunity to do it right here. But this is one of our last chances to get it right in Dallas, and that's why we have a big responsibility.
Doctor, thank you. Appreciate it very much.
Thank you.